Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the Ball and Breakfast podcast with Wayne Pua. I'm Patrick Miller. Here to kind of run through what's happened with the World Series. Concluded last night. We'll talk about NFL trades, that kind of took place last week, building into, week 9 now. You might hear my son in the background crying. But anyways, NBA as well. We're going to cover the Nets, especially just looking at what's happened with, Steve Nash being fired, Ime Udoka, potentially, joining them as head coach in the near future, and everything that's been going on with Kyrie Irving, one of our favorite people to talk about on this podcast for many different reasons. But, we'll recap all across the landscape of sports. If you're, listening to us right now on YouTube, please, leave us a subscribe, a comment, a like, anything that, helps to contribute to the show and, just driving our own awareness. If you're on Instagram, please follow along, engage with us in any way that you see fit. And if you're on audio, any reviews on Apple, Spotify, Google, Anchor, etc., always helpful. With that, let's kick off the MLB, the World Series. Wayne and I had a bet on the board between the Astros and the Phillies. Wayne went with the Phillies, who were obviously, red hot, moving their way through the playoffs. Astros alike were undefeated until getting to the World Series, just, maybe had less of a narrative because of, their past and just their ability to get into the, mix year after year, in the recent years. But we put a bet on the board. It was for a shot of Malort. I'm going to kick it over to Wayne to tell folks about Malort right before he takes his shot. But give us a rundown. What is this for those folks that aren't in Chicago? Those folks maybe out in the DC area, maybe New York, California. Let's hear it.
Yeah, well, first off, it's god awful, but this is Malort from the Carl Jepsen Company in Chicago. I think it got acquired by CH Distillery, which is in the Chicago's Pilsen neighborhood. But I've chatted with locals as well as people from abroad or have lived in Chicago, and I think the overwhelming consensus is that it tastes god awful. But at the same time, and nobody likes it, but at the same time, for whatever reason, it is something that is, I guess, baked into Chicago pop culture as, I don't know, some sort of blue collar type of liquor that everybody hates, but at the same time, everybody loves, type of thing. Kind of like, the Cubs, I guess. So, definitely appreciate it. And, I'm definitely going to own up to it. I got excited when Kyle Schwarber hit that homer, but then I felt so distraught again when Yordan Alvarez hit a 3-run homer over there. So similar to what he did against the Seattle Mariners and winning that series there to just kick off that series. So I guess with all that, and I actually had one of my Vietnamese friends explain this to me, is that it's actually, I guess, popular amongst the Vietnamese community in Chicago just because it kind of reminds them of bitter melon, which I can definitely see since it's bitter as hell. So with all that, I guess, cheers to the Astros here. And hopefully better things to come for the Phillies here. So
yeah. Cheers, Wayne.
Oh, yeah. Oh, it's so awful.
I already know what you're going through, having Malort in past years myself. I mean, I feel like, it's kind of like if you ever had lead, or I don't know if you've cut open your mouth and you're like, hey, you have some blood kind of swishing around your mouth or something. But I mean, also give you bile, something else like that. It's just got this lingering just awfulness to it. I feel like, and let me know when it's over, personally, because I feel like it used to last and linger for minutes, It's just get this out of here.
I feel like I should have got some Sour Patch Kids or something, get that taste in my mouth, but man.
Oh man, I would have had breakfast ready with that shot if if the Astros were to have lost. What a series. Wayne, do you want to kick it off with any sort of just takeaways from what you saw throughout the series, or things that I don't know, just different parts of the roller coaster ride for you, having watched it?
I mean, that pitching, I think that's just been what I saw, both the starting pitching as well as the bullpen for the Astros, I think was the key difference maker here. Phillies they have probably I think they have the best lineup, but when you have the best lineup, it doesn't always mean you're always going to be producing all the time, especially if you go against some great pitching. And Astros, man, I think they had, the three previous starters just really annihilated it and shut down the Phillies roster there. And then their bullpen was just able to hold it up. And then, Phillies bullpen, they've been good, basically throughout the playoffs here. But then, Yordan Alvarez gave it up, with that homer, I think, off of Alvarado, I believe, right? Or I forgot his name, but the lefty over there, the flamethrower, right? And something's gonna. He's basically like Alvarez is basically like the David Ortiz for them for this year. I feel like just clutch 3-run shots, clutch 3-run shots to basically push them over the hump. And I know it was Jeremy Pena, I think, won the MVP, I believe, the MVP World Series or World Series MVP. But in terms of like those big moments, though, it's like Yordan Alvarez definitely gave them a lot of bump for that. And it's just a lot to overcome, I think, for the Phillies there. And just great pitching matchups, I think, that the Astros presented to shut down the Phillies here.
Yeah, I after Game 4, the combined no-hitter, Christian Javier, the bullpen, I wrote a text out to my brother. I was like, this one's over. Like, I don't know why. Just kind of, I had that feeling like that. Man, once you've no-hit somebody, especially in like this context, just kind of got this momentum swing, I feel like. And, I think that just loads the team up with confidence. Like, you absolutely shut this other team down on the road in their own house. Come back the next game with Verlander, play a tight game and edge them out 3-2. Again, the bullpen, Abreu, Neris, Montero, Presley, I mean, solid, lights out, like not giving up runs, not putting guys on. It just felt like the Phillies bats went frosty right after Game 3, and they could just never find their way back into the series. And it was kind of a slow burn too. It wasn't like the Astros were running out and just taking these games over one by one. It was just kind of like, you could feel also maybe from the Astros side, like they've been so close for so many years, between 2017 and now, where it's like there's probably a little bit of nerves or whatever else that they had overcome to just be able to get that final out and have Dusty, begin celebrating his first, championship as a manager. So great series. Really glad we got at least 6 games out of it. There were some swings. I felt, that Game 3, blowout by the Phillies, definitely started to tip the scales a little bit. Even after Game 1, you started to get some confidence in the Phillies to, take this one. And, tough pill to swallow for their fan base. Luckily they've had a recent championship to kind of sit back on a little bit. So not as much urgency. It's not a Cleveland Indians Guardians situation, but in the same sense, just timely hitting too. Like you said, Jeremy Pena, Yordan Alvarez, Alex Bregman, all these guys had just really big hits when they mattered most, guys on base, 2 outs, just an absolute monster blast to center field. There was an absolute no doubter off a lefty throwing 100. Like, those are big things you got to do to win championships. And they seemingly did that, from the wild card division on.
Yeah, no, I think that they were kind of, throughout the playoffs, they were kind of just a steady, like, we're going to thrash you and everything type of mentality throughout. And so I think that just goes to show, like, Dusty Baker, like, he definitely, I think, provided that, I guess, that veteran presence in the clubhouse for the managerial perspective. Like, hey, I've been through all this. I get it. Like, hey, we got haymakers from the Mariners, and then with the Phillies here down 2-1. But we're still good. So I think having that managerial presence, that, hey, I've been through this, like, hey, I haven't won it all, but that's what I'm hearing for you, is to help push you all over that hump there. So I think, I think this is great for Dusty Baker. I'm happy for him. And I think it was a great hire from the Houston Astros standpoint. I know part of people were thinking like, oh, this is kind of like, they're just like, everybody loves Dusty Baker, so it's like they're trying to soften that blow of, we're just a bunch of cheaters. But this just goes to show, like, Dusty Baker does offer something from the manager perspective. he definitely took more of that sabermetrics route. I don't think any of the starting pitchers, pitched like 8 or 9 innings or anything like that. So he definitely has adapted towards that model more so. I think it's just great overall for baseball that Dusty Baker finally has like a World Series after like all the things he's been through with the Cubs and Mark Pryor and the Steve Bartman fiasco and all that fun stuff. So just getting one with the Astros, I think was good for him.
Yeah, I mean, ditto. I feel like he's the kind of guy. I don't know him in the clubhouse, obviously, so not sure what he's doing day to day, but knowledgeable of the game. Going way back to probably having to adapt his own game over time as a manager. I mean, able to get every single team he ever managed into the playoffs. Like, tip your cap to him. That's incredible. But he also just seems genuinely like the father figure, a good guy, somebody you'd want to play for, somebody you actually respect. I mean, I feel like that's where the season was lost for the White Sox with a guy like Tony La Russa, coming into, his managerial campaign is coming off a DUI and, making some colored comments over the years, on race. Like, that kind of stuff is always going to sit, within players deep down inside, whether or not they make a case of it right off the bat. But just in general, I think it's like, how much does this guy motivate you, or is he somebody you want to listen to on a day-to-day basis? Somebody who can actually motivate you, find the things in your game to, take you that extra step up. And you just got to have confidence in a guy like Dusty, because he's been there, he's done it. He just hasn't won the whole thing. But, as a player, you feel assured that what he's saying is probably right.
Yeah. Yeah, I know. So I it's great for him, great for us. So Justin Verlander, I know he's had kind of ups and downs with winning in the World Series. So it was good that he got that W there. And not to say like, I feel sorry for him or anything like that. He's going to go home to Kate Upton. So good for him and everything. He's always been a kind of a stand-up guy. So, and I know he already won a World Series with the Astros and everything. So I think, if he does call it a career, like, he definitely is the first ballot Hall of Famer. But at the same time too, the Astros, I feel like they just have a lot of young talent there still. And it'll be interesting, I think, how, the next coming years, how they all try to keep that intact and manage all that, with their payroll and stuff. So, but yeah, kudos to the Astros from somebody that just lost the bet and had to get a shot of Malort and had to water that shit down basically in order for it to go through. So, but yeah, they definitely earned it, and they were probably the most dominant team in this whole entire playoffs, I would say, with that pitching staff, just shutting everybody down, that timely hitting, and the power that they presented to. So, yeah.
Yeah, it feels like the right team won. Cheating scandal aside, there's only, I think, 5 players that are left over from that time. Now, I don't know about the executive staff and, the analytics departments and the other culprits in it all, but, let's just hope that nothing comes out news-wise about more tomfoolery and stuff going on and, not wanting to tarnish this victory versus the one from 2017. But, yeah, it's hard to like. I mean, this like bad taste for the Astros. I don't know how long it's going to last, but I think people are going to think about it for a long time. And anytime they make the playoffs again, years moving forward, it's still going to be one of those like things where I think a lot of people are going to be reluctant to pull for them. But it's their own fault as an organization, and I guess they're trying to turn the page here. But yeah. Yeah, go ahead.
I like how you said bad taste, and I automatically looked at this bottle Malort right here. So yeah.
Do you still taste anything right now?
Now I'm okay. Now I feel like I've recovered all that. So the water has finally come there, and yeah, I'm probably gonna brush my teeth and I don't eat some Sour Patch Kids after.
But, what kind of liquor is it, by the way? Like,
I don't even know. Like, what does this say? Has the aroma and full-bodied flavor of an unusual botanical. I don't know what that's supposed to be. Yeah.
So something from Chicago's Botanical Gardens is some sort of root that's fermented over time or something. I don't know.
35% alcohol volume and everything. So yeah, I don't think it actually particularly says what it is, but yeah, some sort of concoction that's just made to. It's just bitter as hell. So,
got it. Yeah. Well, I guess we talked about Dusty Baker. Staying on the theme of managers in baseball, the White Sox. We got our guy, Pedro Grifol, moves over from the Kansas City Royals organization as their bench coach to becoming our 42nd manager. And heard the news, saw the presser. So far, it looks like they've also added Charlie Montoyo, former Blue Jays manager of the year in 2020, as the bench coach. And he's bringing over Tim Kosar is, I guess, his hitting coach. They'll bring over from the Royals. But Wayne, did you have any and sorry, Tosar, Mike Tosar is the name of the hitting coach, not Kosar. But do you have any thoughts on this hire and what direction you think, the White Sox are moving in and how you think it'll fare on the South side?
Yeah. I mean, I liked everything that I heard from him, and I can definitely see why I think they liked him. I think that, again, from whatever we hear, and I don't know how much truthful is, but from what we've been told, right, from the White Sox, is that this was kind of their consensus, like no-brainer pick for them. So from their interview, and I think they also interviewed Ozzy and a couple other people. I think they might have been interviewed Joe Esposito too and all that. So
Ron Washington, other guys.
Yeah. But I think overall, in terms of like what you're trying to do from an organizational standpoint, and also like with the roster they have right now, I think they definitely need a younger presence and somebody definitely outside of the organization to kind of bring a different perspective. Because I think the biggest thing for this White Sox team, it's not talent. It more so has to do with like the intangible stuff of like their mentality coming into games. How do they manage their careers and everything a little bit more so. And certainly, having somebody, I guess, that is Hispanic definitely helps, but he is a former catcher. I think he also has like basically taken every single position in in the clubhouse essentially. So whether it be like a base coach or hitting coach, bench coach, you name it, and has been part of a World Series winning team from the clubhouse standpoint. So knows what it takes to do that. And if you look at like that Kansas City team, like it was kind of just a bunch of like no names or kind of makeshift type of players, with like Ben Zobrist and then like Lorenzo Cain, like kind of like quasi all-stars, but really good hard nosed type of baseball players that a little bit more of the old school type of players, but then also the new school people also kind of like them too. So I think bring that mindset and those intangibles I think that he presents is great. Again, from the catcher perspective, like catchers usually are pretty good managers because they're always thinking about the game and outs and how to get people out and then shifts, things of that nature. So I think it's a good a solid overall hire, just at least on paper from this standpoint. Would it have been nicer to have an organization outside of the Royals? Yes, but I think that's the only thing I can fault him on there. So, but overall, hey, we'll see what happens. I think it was an overall solid hire from just kind of analyzing the situation and just seeing what he brings to the table. And from the press conferences, seems like he can communicate really well to the media, to probably the players as well. So I think overall solid hire. We'll see what happens though as things progress.
Yeah, I feel the same way. I think when I first saw the news and I heard his name in the mix, I was like, who's this guy from Kansas City? Like, why are we so excited about this? Like, what would he actually bring to the table? But you start to peel back the layers of the onion. It's like, yeah, he does actually represent a lot of the things I think we need at this point. Kind of feels like a Matt Eberflus or like a John Harbaugh going to the Ravens type hire off the bat. Like, didn't really know the name, really weren't too sure about the background or what he excels at as a coach. But I think you nailed a lot of the top points. A guy who's a catcher, could probably dictate a ball game. Kind of just in his press conference overall, it's just kind of seems like a guy who is a clear leader. He feels like somebody who's like familial. Like I just feel like he'd be like that uncle or that that father figure or something. I think a lot of these players might need. And he's got a gritty background. I mean, he's not coming from like he was a player and then he instantly became a manager based on his title. Like he's had to work hard for his opportunities, and he's like slowly and surely worked his way up the ranks. And I think a lot of people would respect that. A guy like Mike Schilt or Brian Snitker of the Braves. It's like I think this kind of managerial hire is becoming more popular, just for the sake that this guy's paid his dues and he's just a good human. And I think we weren't in the interview room with the 18 or so other candidates for this job, but for the whole staff to be like blown away by this guy, and for the Rick Hahn to, tell him whether or not we hire you or somebody else gets the opportunity, like, you surely deserve a job. So, luckily he's landed with us, and I like the structure of this staff too off the bat. Bringing over Charlie Montoyo is pretty under the radar, but I think an incredible hire, because I think if we had hired Charlie Montoyo outright, I'd have been happy with that. For the fact that he's led, the Blue Jays clubs to, playoff berths, and, he comes from an analytical background. He came from the Rays system. So it's like, he's bringing over that kind of knowledge too. He's Latino. That'll, really pair well with Grifol and our players and such. So that's all good. And then I've heard good things about Tosar too as a hitting coach. He did a lot of work with Salvador Perez and MJ Melendez to get them to be credible baseball players. I mean, Sal is probably one of the best hitting catchers in the game. So that's all positive. There aren't a lot of holes in this hire, I think, after, again, looking into it a little bit deeper and not judging him based on his time with KC. But I also wasn't aware off the bat that he was part of that championship team. So, I think he brings over those Ozzy ball elements without being Ozzy, which I think is what we kind of want. Like somebody who thinks like Ozzy and maybe like wants to, steer the ship like Ozzy, but doesn't come with all the hoopla. And then we don't have, a guy in his 70s plus who might be managing too. Like I like Ron Washington, but again, do we want to start off with a guy who's at his age? And it's like, how many good years will we get in you before we have to make another decision? So I'm happy with this whole thing.
Yeah, no, bring it on. I feel like that's a great analogy there of, he's like Ozzy without the drama in a sense. So, and all the theatrics. So, and if you look, what he's produced with Salvador Perez, it's like, if he can do that and then do that tenfold, with all the, I guess, Hispanic players that the White Sox have, and kind of just, maximize the potential out of all the players that the White Sox have, then it's great. If, from the hitting standpoint, which definitely we struggled with, right? That was like our, I think, biggest Achilles heel last season was just, we weren't hitting homers. Like, how do we have all this talent? We're not hitting any homers and all. So, I think, bringing the new hitting coach, bringing a veteran coach in Charlie Montoya, and then, being able to just communicate, with the Hispanic players. I think those are all the key things of, how can the White Sox progress from what they were last season, which was just very anemic. Again, from the manager standpoint, it definitely seemed like Tony La Russa had some health issues going into the season, and he definitely has had a Hall of Fame career, but he was definitely anemic, I think, in the managing perspective, and I think the players felt that. And hopefully this can bring a little bit more enthusiasm into the game for the White Sox that they were missing last season, and get some inspiration, I think, going forth. So.
Yeah, kind of like also like what you're saying is, it's like when you hired a guy like La Russa, you're hiring like the main actor. And I feel like when you bring over a guy like Grifol, he's like the stage crew. And it's like, we just need somebody to not be so polarizing, to be like, I'm up here and I'm going to spread my good word down here. It's like somebody who's really on level with a lot of these guys, and somebody who can like really speak to who they are as players, and like, kind of take a back seat to all the spotlight and everything else, and just manage the game, manage these people. And like, let's see if this team can just stay on the field too. Like, we're going into the off season, so could be some tinkering here with the roster, with the staff, but we'll just have to see.
Yeah, I'm honestly more excited, and now I'm in the moment of it all. But I feel like it definitely has to do with this coming off season. I feel more optimistic than I did the last off season, in that we kind of know where our faults were. And I think going forth, it's been addressed, I think, at least in the manager perspective, of like bringing more enthusiasm in there, identifying, somebody that has a track record of developing players to become better hitters overall. Obviously health, that'll be, I think, the key thing going forth into next season. But, our players, they got healthier towards the end of the season. Great. It's just, next season, can they maintain, a somewhat, fully healthy season, I think, this coming season, and then addressing, right field a little bit, or, left-handed at bats, second base. We'll see how that, who's going to fit that spot going forth. And, I think all those things will be key things. And then obviously, health and being able to hit homers, and, a very much more homer-centric type of Major League Baseball in terms of modern day analytics and everything. I feel like if they can address all those things and become more advanced in aspect, which it seems like they are doing more so of, then I feel like this coming off season, I think, yeah, it'll be great. If they address some of those things going forth. So
For sure. Well, we'll keep our eye on, player movement, I guess, moving into the off season. Speaking of which, on the subject for the NFL, lots of player movement over the past week with some big names, now suiting up for different teams. Wayne, why don't you just kick it off with, one or two, transactions that you saw that really caught your eye and things that, were either wins or losses for the team you're mentioning.
Yeah, I definitely want to call out Dolphins getting Bradley Chubb. I think that was a great move. I think there's been this whole idea: are they contenders? Are they not? Maybe they definitely have a young quarterback, but they put a lot of talent around him. But the defensive side, they needed that pass rusher, and Bradley Chubb definitely does that for them. So I think the haul that they gave, it was like Bradley Chubb. They got Bradley Chubb and a 2025 fifth rounder, so not going to see that for a while. But yeah, they did give up Chase Edmonds, a first rounder, and then a 2024 fourth rounder here. So, but for an elite pass rusher that I think Bradley Chubb is, and you definitely saw like what he was able to bring to the table with those Broncos teams. It's like the Broncos defense was not the issue. They were actually really, really good. Almost like Super Bowl type of in terms of talent and everything there. It's like a Super Bowl qualified defense, and Bradley Chubb was one of the reasons why bringing that pass rushing effect there. So I think for the Dolphins, and they signed him to an extension as well, which if you're going to cough up a first rounder, you might as well do that. So I think definitely for the future, like this is a great pickup for the Dolphins, obviously not just for this year, but for the next several years, potentially being contenders, with Tua and Tyreek on the offensive side, Waddle, and then the playmaker that they have now with Bradley Chubb on the defensive side. When you have a pass rusher, it's a lot easier to build a defense around that. So I think going forth, the Dolphins are definitely, I feel like a team to be reckoned with for the next several years. So.
Yeah, I agree with that. And, Jalen Phillips on the other side of the line there for the Dolphins too. So, they needed more help on the D side, like you're saying. I think they added Jeff Wilson too as a running back. Got rid of Chase Edmonds in that Chubb deal, but Dolphins could be a sneaky team here if they get into the playoffs. I think they're trending that way as of right now. Tua's just got to get fully healthy and get fully out of everything that happened in the start of the season here. But I think things are definitely trending up for Miami.
Yeah, no, for sure. So I definitely have them. And then, hey, let's talk about our Bears. Chase Claypool,
Of course.
I mean, it's definitely one of those, like, I get the whole idea that it's definitely a future type of thing for the Bears, right? There's this idea, I guess, are they buyers or sellers, but I think with Ryan Poles and where he's at right now, he's trying to position the team for not just next year or this year, but for the next 5 years with Justin Fields probably as the helm. Because, if he's not able to surround Justin Fields, who I think everybody's kind of agreed, and he would not have taken the job, I feel like, if he didn't believe Justin Fields was a capable quarterback. But, as a GM, if you have a young quarterback with the talent level of Justin Fields, it's your job, and it's going to be your fault if you don't develop him properly. And, if you look at the free agent market, I think for this upcoming offseason, it just isn't there. I think like the best one, the best free agent was like Shark or something like that. Like he's not someone you're going to pay top dollar for a wide receiver. So I think that came into play of like, oh, hey, we have, several draft picks. Hey, let's see what we can get with the second rounder. I think it was kind of a twofold effect with Chase Claypool potentially going to the Packers. I think was another team that was rumored. So, for me at least, it was like, it makes sense, I guess, in that aspect of, Chase Claypool like had an excellent rookie season, I think, as far as that goes. And I actually preferred him over Kmet when we drafted Kmet, I think several years ago. He's a great, he's definitely a solid, deep route threat, which I think favors for sure Justin Fields. But also he's actually a pretty solid blocker. I mean, he's like 6'4", like 230 or something like that. So definitely well built there and can block. And I think there was some questions like, oh, maybe he actually could be like a tight end type of, like a Travis Kelce type of tight end there. So, I think he can definitely work well in bunch formations. So I think from the offense that the Bears have right now, and potentially in the next several years, I think he's definitely a solid haul. Obviously, would I have preferred that second rounder? Sure, but I think from the second round standpoint, it makes sense. The wide receiver draft class, I think, from what I've seen, what I've been seeing, after the first round, it definitely isn't as appealing. I think maybe compared to last season or the years prior. So I think those are my initial thoughts from the Chase Claypool standpoint. But overall, I think it was a solid choice for the Bears.
Yeah, I saw ESPN gave the trade like a D+ for the Bears on this one, and I think majority of the reason is because Claypool will be a free agent after next season. So unless we extend him, was a second round pick worth it to bring him over? To these analysts, it wasn't. But like you were mentioning, if the Packers are in play there, and Rodgers going to be around for 3 more years, and the wide receiver pool for free agents is pretty thin, we need a guy who can be plugged in right away. Somebody who can work with Fields over the next year and a half. Yes, there's a possibility of extending him. I don't think we've done it just yet, but I think we also can take a look at what he's going to do for the rest of this year and decide how much is he actually worth. And, dangle an offer out there that I think works for both sides. For the mid to short long term, if it happens to be something that's super exciting. But I think a second round pick is what the fair price was, and like you said, Claypool popped in his first year for sure. Got a little bit crowded in, the Steelers wide receiver core for, maybe his numbers, something like that. But I know there was some question marks with his maturity. I know Tomlin, constantly poked at Claypool, and there were some sound bites around videos I've seen over the years where, Tomlin's kind of like picking on him or whatever else. But like, at this point, he's got, almost 3 years logged, plus in the NFL. I think he is a good receiver. I think at the very least he can be a second receiver for the team. And, given at where Fields is with his receiving core, I mean, think about Pickett just lost Claypool, and Claypool is probably like one of 4 options for him. Whereas like the Bears, I don't know if they've got, outside of like Mooney having a good year last year, if they actually had some legit options at the NFL level for Fields. So I think a lot of what we talk about with Justin Fields is, I think he gets nitpicked a lot. I think he gets a lot of undue criticism when he doesn't have like an NFL level receiving core or even protection. So I think this is a start of good things. Another trade that popped was the Roquan Smith deal, and we got Baltimore's second round pick and I think a 5th with that one. So like you were saying with the pick we dangled was ours, which I don't think we wanted to get rid of in this Claypool deal, but in the same sense we were pressed because Packers were probably offering up their second, which was probably a tick better than Baltimore's at this point. So you got to make that move if you want to be a little bit serious. So I'm cool with what Poles has been doing so far. I think he's pulling the right strings. I trust this. I think we can count on Claypool to be a solid NFL receiver for us. I mean, he's got some upside there too. He could be a 1. He could be, but we'll just have to see. But I like the deal too. Yeah.
And adding more onto that, with regards to like free agency, like it's definitely been always stated that we have going into this off season, right? It's like we're gonna have like what $100 million or something like that too. So again, without that free agent or that wide receiver free agent that we can offer a bunch of money to, that's worth all that money, I think is the key thing there. Like not a Christian Kirk, right? Something that is actually worth the money there. So trading that second round pick doesn't seem as bad, especially if he is going to take that next step and be like, okay, hey, yeah, I'll play ball with you, Justin Fields. My buddy Cole Kmet is here, so I'm going to be cordial and everything there. So it makes it so that, okay, maybe we're not going to concentrate as much on the wide receiver core, especially, hey, if also N'Keal Harry can also show up a little bit too, be that, that second type of, big wide receiver option, and then have Mooney, maybe play more in the slot, which, I think he's maybe more suitable there, for Justin Fields. So, and then, hey, add in some, more reinforcements on the offensive line. Maybe get Gesicki at tight end, and maybe they can play more 2 tight end sets. Maybe they do want to resign, Cole Kmet, or I don't know what the situation we want with Cole Kmet is. He just hasn't been catching that many balls this season. Pretty good blocker and everything. So maybe, if he is open to staying there, kind of like as that second tight end, and then have Gesicki be more that pass catching type of tight end, then, I think that can be definitely a great offensive team going forth. And then, adding more pieces on the offensive line, upgrading on center, maybe adding in a tackle, on the right side. I think there's a lot of room left to grow on that side. I think Jenkins, it sounds like he's kind of taking over that right guard's spot. Nobody wants to see Mustafa at center, I feel like. And, it's definitely, I don't feel like it's been determined if like Lucas Patrick or even moving Cody Whitehair in there would be the best fit. So that's always where I think upgrading the offensive line, and then, defensive line and, linebacker now a little bit more so of, I feel like on the defensive side, hey, put that $100 million, allocate it, appropriately towards, free agents on those sides, which I think I saw, some decent defensive ends and DTs that I think can fit in there. And then, utilize the rest of your draft capital, I feel like, for the rest of the spots. So I think overall, Poles is setting up again for the next couple of years, which I think is smart, compared to, I think Ryan Pace was definitely like, no, things need to happen now. Let's get rid of all our draft picks and see what happens. So overall, I think Poles, it's definitely wait and see, but I think overall he's positioning himself up for success. So
yeah, I think it definitely takes away some of the desperation heading into the offseason to be like, we got to make a splash at wide receiver. That definitely takes a lot of leverage away from us as a club. If you're working with somebody's agent, they're like, well, we know you're screwed if you don't sign our guy. So I took a quick look at who might be free. I mean, Juju Smith-Schuster, Michael Thomas. I think there was one other on the Jacoby Myers, perhaps would be a nice like 2 or 3. But looking at that core, it's like, you're right. I mean, I think Claypool's in the same conversation as those guys. So why not just go out and get him now? So I like what you're saying. I think, we've got a lot of holes around the roster that, need to be addressed. And I think we're making the right steps. And the team's been actually playing pretty decently this year without a lot of this stuff. So, just think if, you can get some more young depth and then get some, solid veterans to surround them with. I think we're moving in the right direction for this club.
Yeah, and we have that first rounder and everything. I think right now we're positioned like maybe like pick 14 or like mid first rounders. So if if now is the time to tank, I feel like now is the time to tank and then see if we can upgrade that pick. There's some excellent talent, I think, position for us. If we were to get like a top 10 pick, whether it be adding in adding in a wide receiver of some sort into that group, or there's some solid defensive ends I think and that are draftable in that area, as well as some DTs and OTs as well. So overall, I think we're set up for a pretty good next couple of years, especially as we see Justin Fields progress, without as much talent as I feel like a lot of other young quarterbacks have right now. So
for sure. I guess sticking on football, we're heading into week 9. Just curious if you have any other impressions that you wanted to share from week 8, or, kind of going through this week, or where you think, just things generally stand in the NFL.
I mean, in terms of like where things stand, I'd say Bills, I think, are the best team right now. I think you definitely call them out as like being the Super Bowl contenders. I think we're all kind of just waiting for the Bills at this point versus the Chiefs in like the AFC Championship game, which I think that would be awesome. So, hey, if that happens, then I think that'd be a great thing for football. It's also interesting that the Titans are like 5-2. And they're kind of having a quarterback controversy as well. So I don't know if that's like the best thing. Like, hey, if Malik Willis kind of does like a Lamar Jackson and goes on winning streaks and everything there, and pushes them through the playoffs, then great. It would definitely be, I think, good for the Titans. I think for their future and kind of progressing Malik Willis in that sense. So, but I definitely as an AFC Ravens fan, like the Ravens are my favorite team, I think, out there. It sounds like they're progressing. It sounds like, they definitely had kind of running back issues there, but, with, I think, Gus Edwards being healthy and Kenyon Drake being healthy there, I think they're good. They're going to be, I think, a good team stepping forth. And, health-wise too, on the defensive end, they're getting Ojabo and Browser as, the pass rushers out there. So, I feel like they're only going to get better defensively, and that was definitely I feel like was missed, from the team up to this point. So I think adding those players, I think will be better for them, I think, going forth. So and they also added Jason Pierre-Paul. So from the pass rushing standpoint, like I feel like they have enough assets for the Ravens to actually progress there, along with that awesome secondary that just hasn't performed, I feel like, because of the pass rush. So I think, yeah, all those are my initial, I think, AFC thoughts there. But do you have any thoughts on either the NFC teams? I know those Eagles, man, they're 8-0 and everything. Would love to have your take on things.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like there's three like above the pack teams in the NFL. It's like you said, the Bills, it's the Chiefs, it's the Eagles. As far as like my top three, I would go, and I think there's like this middle tier. For me, I feel like the Niners, even though the record doesn't really show it, are one of those teams for me, especially after the Christian McCaffrey acquisition. I think that'll do something to their offense that they don't even expect. I mean, like that guy, obviously had like a pass, a reception, and a rush for a touchdown last week. I mean, it's just a sample of what he'll give you week to week if he stays healthy. But just a run first culture like that, great, defensive line and a really smart coaching staff. I think that's a team that's going to, kind of grow over the season. Granted, CMC stays healthy. I also think Dallas, I'm not a Dallas guy. Like I never have been really in like the last 15, 20 years. I just don't get to like Super Bowl with the Cowboys. But, when they're putting their bread and butter on the defensive side of the ball, and it's less about the playmakers and it's more about like, I don't know, just pounding it out, grounding it out, just being a tough-nosed team. I mean, they're definitely shutting teams down on the defensive side. So I think they're the type of team too that if they don't let their heads get to them, they could be in the mix. But I always struggle with Dallas because I think there's just way too much spotlight year to year on that club. And I've got to see Dak prove it at this point. I mean, he's got to show us that he's beyond mature. He's healthy. And he can incorporate that running game, especially a guy like Tony Pollard just needs to rock more often and kind of make Ezekiel like the feature, side piece on that team. Cause it's kind of clear to us now who's in the mix, but Minnesota, they've got, kind of a Tennessee Titans vibe to them. I feel like, 6-1 leading the NFC North. I'm not there yet. I love me some Kirk Cousins. I do, very boring, probably shows up with like an Old Navy sweater to Thanksgiving, but you got to love the guy. I mean, he's just, he gets his teams there. I just want to see him, maybe take a bump this year, but that's all I really got for the NFC. I feel like it's a lot more shallow out there than it is in the AFC. I think AFC's got a lot more depth to it, a lot more surprises that could, come out of the woodwork, especially the team like Miami, like we were talking about. Cincinnati just still, I know Jamar Chase got injured, but if he can get better, I think they could be in it too. But it's been a fun year of football so far, but I see it that way. I'm still kind of sticking with my Bills pick. I'm going to have to pivot a little bit on the Buccaneers at this point. I don't want to fully count them out because TB12 always has some magic left in his bag there. But the Eagles, if they don't shoot themselves in the foot, I mean they could walk into this thing healthy, fresh, best record in the league. They could be just fully backed to waltz their way into the Super Bowl.
Yeah, no, for sure. I think that Eagles team, as long as they stay healthy, like defensive wise, like it's hard to beat any team with that defensive front, with that secondary that they have. Like there's hardly any team I think that can compete with the amount of talent and then also obviously execution on that front. I think I'm just looking at I guess points against at least in the NFC, they're second in terms of points to the Cowboys just by 2 points. So and the Cowboys, they have, Diggs being a playmaker on the secondary front. And then obviously our pick for, Micah Parsons as defensive player of the year. So, but the Eagles team, I think they just have a lot of talent spread out. I'm hoping that, I'm looking at the offseason a little bit, hoping that the Bears can acquire a few of those pieces in the offseason there. But, I definitely like them. I think coming out of the NFC just in general, we'll see how things progress, but I do like your take. I think in the 49ers, with McCaffrey, like, it definitely is like, why are they paying so much for a running back, right? But you can definitely see where he just fits really well with them. And yeah, that was just like what, week 2, I think he tossed those week 2 with the team, where he tossed, the touchdown, received a touchdown, ran in for a touchdown. Like, that's just 1 week. So again, yeah, if he can stay healthy, like the way that Shanahan kind of works, I feel like this is a match made in heaven. But I think it's always a question of, can Garoppolo actually make a couple plays here and there when he can with that team? But obviously, they do have some good play calling, I think, from the Shanahan standpoint, the run game, and then Deebo Samuel's definitely is a difference maker. So and a solid offensive line. So if they can, great, but it's hard to go against, I feel like, against the Eagles at this point. But yeah.
So we will see week 9 happening today as we speak on Sunday morning. So we'll be sure to, have some points going into next week. But transitioning over to the NBA, a lot of crazy things are happening in Brooklyn right now. Wayne, we can pick one of the other sides here if you want to start off with Ime Udoka as possible coach and the Nash firing, or we'll dive right into Kyrie Irving. I'll let you have the floor.
I feel like Udoka is a more appropriate lead off in a way. It definitely is like one of those. So like, I guess he committed adultery, but I don't know the whole situation between him and Nia or anything like that. Like, maybe they have their own thing within their marriage, which, hey, if that's what they're into, that's what they're into. Go for it, right? But it definitely kind of just goes to show like the two sides of the NBA, right? Or the two sides of anybody that, you saw you perform, you saw in your first season, you brought a young up and coming type of team with, enough talent to, make a run. You brought them to the finals and everything. Great. Can we do that with, with KD, Kyrie, etc.? Then yeah, we'd love to have you here. So I feel like, the Nets were like, hey, you violated corporate policy. We don't care as long as you can win. I feel like that's the mentality more so for the Nets, where it definitely felt like the Celtics were being like, whoa, that's crossing the line there. That's way too much drama for even, even though you did produce, right? That's just way too much drama for us, for, what we are as stands an organization. So I feel like out of all things like this, it just goes to show like the two different ways that these two franchises approach these things. That being said, it's like, the Celtics have been really, they've been really good for a while, right? In terms of their championships, in terms of, how they've managed the team. I think in the past decade or two, with getting, KG, Paul Pierce, Ray Allen, that team as well, Rondo, etc. Developing that team, and then, now the team that they have right now, training some of those assets to acquire picks so that they can acquire the, essentially the team that they have right now, right, with Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown. So, I feel like it's definitely one of those. We'll see what Udoka can do with the Nets. I guess whenever he does join the team or whatever. So, versus it seems like the Celtics right now they're doing pretty good without him at the moment. So, I guess it just goes to show like how much does an NBA coach really matter, in the NBA with all that talent. It's like, okay, I feel like half the job is don't screw this up, make sure, obviously put your team in position to win, but like how much of it is towards that versus, obviously just having a talented team that where you can just be aligned on the game plan. And maybe that's what matters more than, being being more of a persona, in that sense. So, but yeah, what do you think about at least that situation?
Yeah, I mean, I think the Lakers are to Maury Povich as the Brooklyn Nets are to Jerry Springer. I mean, it is like it is like an absolute, dumpster fire out there right now. For Ime Udoka, going back to what he did over the offseason for the Celtics, it felt like what he did obviously violated team policy, but it went beyond that in some sort of way that just hasn't been communicated to the public for whatever reason. And that's a character thing. I think it's an awareness thing as a coach, as a leader, to know like right from wrong and like what you need to do in your position and kind of like how to maintain that and everything else. But he is a good basketball coach. I mean, he proved that last year, and he did prove that also when he was a part of the Brooklyn Nets staff. I mean, he was an attractive, candidate, when he became eligible. So I think he can do the job. I think he can do the job of being a head coach in the NBA. And I think him getting another opportunity, especially not to just like sit out the entire year, which is so so stupid. Like nobody is going to sit out a full year and then get, somehow like reincorporated back in as head coach with all this, like, just excess baggage. Like no team's going to want to put that on themselves and the team going into the year after. So I think transitioning out, getting Joe Mazzulla into the head coaching role for Boston, great thing. He was already plugged in. Getting Udoka to Brooklyn, whether it's with KD, Kyrie, and everybody for the long term, it's a good fit for him and for, I think the Brooklyn Nets. It's like, hopefully they can get past what actually happened last offseason, but in the same sense, like he knows that organization. He knows like that staff, that exec staff, the ownership group, like it's a good enough fit, but it's with these guys right now and to like reverse the trends of what's been happening so far to start this year. Like, I think one thing would have to happen, and it's probably going to transition into our next conversation, but I think you get rid of Kyrie Irving somehow, some way, in some trade, release him if it comes to that. But like, I think there's been enough like rumors to this point where there are teams that are interested enough to take the shot. And I would just take the shot. I would just like take the shot and see what you can do with the rest of this roster, because there is enough talent still there to compete in the Eastern Conference for, a deep, playoff run potentially. But I think you just got to get rid of the cancer that's kind of flowing through the bloodstream of the Nets organization.
Yeah, I know for sure. I mean, for me at least, it definitely seems like is Kyrie just it, or is the entire organization it? I feel like I think from the top down, it seems like they just got some issues. Either they're tolerating stuff, or they are willing to kind of pull some strings in order to, I don't know, I guess win or achieve some sort of roster that can be perceived to win, versus like the Celtics, for at least from my standpoint, it seems like the Celtics want to do it in a wholesome way, right? Like, hey, we had these policies get violated or whatever. Like, they're very much more team policies rather than like, I don't know, moral standard type of policies, right? From a grander, I guess a higher end point of view. So it definitely feels like the Nets, just as an organization, at least at this point, they just care about, looking good and winning, I guess, but they're not doing either one pretty well at the moment. I feel like maybe a little bit winning, I guess, better, but they just haven't been able to put it all together. So, but yeah, let's maybe transition to Kyrie. Let's talk about this. What is your take about this whole idea? If you want to set the table and give your thoughts on it.
Yeah, just to touch on what you said, I feel like it's like they're from the ownership GM perspective. I feel like you're damned if you do, and you're damned if you don't. You're damned if you do take all this BS, because it's just an ongoing circus. You're constantly putting out fires. But if you don't, and you start making moves, then hey, you're the staff, you're the ownership group that got rid of all these all-stars, and you're starting back from like a middle of the conference on down with whatever trades you pull out. So they're in a tough. They've been tightroping it for a while. I shift a lot of this blame on the players. I think they came in with an agenda. They came in with an air of arrogance, not even confidence, arrogance in how they were going to assume their roster spots. It wasn't about being basketball players. It was about being GMs. It was about being owners. It was about being like, mega stars in the world. It was like they chose that situation to do exactly what they wanted to do, and they've done it. And this is the result of what they've decided to do. And Kyrie's stuff, I mean, we could go over the documentary. We could talk about, the ins and outs of what we've heard over the last week. I feel like this is all common knowledge at this point, like what was actually posted, what the reaction to it was, where he's currently at with his suspension. Like, we got the 5 games and we're kind of testing the waters, whether or not he, goes by this list of 5 things. I think Shams of NBA like put it out, like, here's the 5 things he has to do to get himself back on the court or whatever. But I just want to break down like Kyrie again. I feel like there's a lot of things that go through my mind when I think about the decision he made, but like, I think at the core of it, it's like, he just has a thirst for attention at his level that, only a handful of people, I feel like, kind of want. I feel like this is like a Donald Trump thing. This is a Kanye West thing. This is like, I need eyeballs on me for any reason, but for like very shock-worthy very buzzworthy type events, type topics, and it's always kind of like steering negative. And I think he likes it. I think he likes that attention. I kind of like, just kind of equate it to like he's a middle sibling. He's got older sister, younger sister. He's got that like that annoying need to like irritate, to like push buttons, to push back against. I think he's got this like plot against the mass media in a lot of what he puts out there. It's just like I think he likes playing the mind games. He likes playing the word games. He likes to have people sit back with their whiteboards and try to figure out, okay, he said this and that links to this, and here's why we're wrong and he's right, or vice versa. It's like I just think he likes to deceive. He likes to push buttons in a lot of ways, and a lot of this is anchored around the racial awakening, social justice movement in this country and where he stands with that. And I'm on board with him in that sense. I'm on board with what core issues he has a problem with in this country when it comes to, Black rights, the treatment of African Americans over time, the history of discrimination, all this stuff. It all makes sense, but it's the way he chooses to attack it. It's the way he chooses to footnote it, to cite it with, garbage like this documentary that he put out there. A documentary that basically debunks the Holocaust, that basically, pulls little pieces and parts of Adolf Hitler quotes and tries to spin it in a way that makes like the entire, white Jewish population feel like they've stolen, feel like they've, wronged, the Black race. I feel like it's just wrong in the sense that I feel like he knows what he's doing, and I don't think there's any confusion there truly, but I think it's always, addressed with confusion. He adds confusion to confusion. And I think that's the wrong part of it, because we have a generation that's growing up with all this technology, with all this access to information, with a lot of ability to be impressionable with these messages that are put out there from stars that you want to emulate, guys with lots of talent and are cool and are signed by Nike and, run with LeBron James and, all this other stuff. Like, he is a guy that people want to, emulate in a way. Kids want to emulate in a way. And I just think like what he does with his platform is just so irresponsible. And, I know it took a while for the NBA to respond, for the Nets to respond, but at least they did. I mean, at least they didn't, take a Houston Astros championship approach to it and do absolutely nothing with it. But the other thing I'll throw out there before I get off my soapbox is I think there's also a part of Kyrie that wants to get off this Nets team and wants to be traded. And I think he will do anything or, everything to make himself unattractive, to either get released, get traded, have his freedom again, like whatever it is. But I think with the decision he made about this documentary, it's moving beyond basketball to his sponsorships and to other things that will make him money, where it's like, okay, now I'm going to have to retread a little bit. I'm going to have to apologize because I took this a little bit too far and I didn't probably think that it would get to this level. But I think there's an element to him where he's like, it's this fight or flight thing. I don't think he's a fighter. I think he's ready to flee, to find another situation that he can be a star in again and see if that works out there. But man, his time's running out quickly.
Yeah, no, I think those are good points. It would be funny though, yeah, if Kyrie, if I don't know, they were to trade like him for Russell Westbrook, right? I think I've seen that floated around. I don't know if that situation's any better, at least from the Nets standpoint. Maybe better for the Lakers and that whole fiasco. But yeah, I definitely feel like Kyrie and Kanye just ought to get like on a podcast together and just like talk things out, and we'll see what happens with that. But I feel like there's just a lot of yeah, I don't know what it is. I don't know if it is like narcissism or if it's just the idea to be different. All I know is that everybody kind of like wants to play sometimes the victim of their own story, right, or be the protagonist. And sometimes I feel like I guess the free-spirited, free-minded type of people, right, will approach any type of information that kind of catapults that perspective from them a little bit more so, right? We see that with Kanye, and then obviously now with Kyrie, it's like Kyrie's or Kanye is like what the richest black man in America or something like that, or one of the richest, and Kyrie's definitely successful in his own ways as well. So, and I get now I'm looking like online and I'm like, I'm seeing the worst of humanity. I feel like when in these old things, like, yeah, you know, we're all for Kanye and all that. He's speaking truths and all these things, especially, you know, with Kyrie. But then it's like, well, is this going to be breeding now more like anti-Semitic you know thoughts or uh actions out there, right? Like that's where I'm like, you know, afraid for maybe my Jewish friends. It's like, are we going to see more vitriol similar to kind of how we saw, you know, with Trump and everything? It's like, hey, you can be right about 10% of things, but then if you're going to act on those 10% of things that, you know, maybe you're right on or what have you, or at least what you view as right, then it's like, are you going to also like elicit violence? Are you going to say that my group is worse off than your group? Because I think that was my biggest thing is like we oftentimes played this victim Olympics, if you will, right? Where it's like, oh, you know, yeah, black people had slavery, but you know, the Jewish people had the Holocaust or whatever, and then now we got to like, oh well, you know, the white Jews overtook the black Jews and enslaved them and stuff like that. That's where this just becomes like, hey, we're in today's, you know, today, right? Not 100 years ago, we're in today. The people that did all those things 100 plus years ago or whenever, they're not alive today. Well, what about today? What's happening right now? Are we always going to linger on the past and, you know, what the fathers of our fathers did to, you know, somebody else's fathers? Then it's like that becomes this whole essentially like gang culture, right? Where, oh, you wronged me or somebody, you know, from your past wronged me. Therefore, I must wrong you. I must, you know, shoot somebody from your clan, if you will. So that's where I feel like this is the most unproductive stuff that I feel like that can happen in, you know, today's society, as opposed to, hey, here are the things that might have happened in the past. How do we move forward? How do we, you know, change certain systems? How do we, you know, bring more inclusivity here? Like those are not the conversations that are being had. It's more like, oh, the past, it sucks. And everybody that has wronged me, they ought to, you know, like, what do you want? What do you want to happen to them? You want pitchforks and fire and stuff like that, or what? Like, what's the end goal here? Because all I hear is like, you know, people with big platforms, like several millions of followers on social media. And what we've seen in the past is that when you have a strong following, you know, we talk about influencers and influencer culture, right? Like, you know, I've been, you know, a victim, if you will, of, oh, I'll go see a nice restaurant on Instagram. Oh, I got to try that burger now or whatever. Now it's extrapolated from, you know, oh, I see a meme about, or I see Kyrie now, you know, posting something that might be anti-Semitic, or, you know, push out some beliefs that maybe I hold inwards towards myself, uh, and then project that onto somebody else, right? That's what we saw, kind of like as an example from, there was that, I don't know, the TV show The Boys. I might have talked about that before, right? But kind of like superheroes, right? Some guy was like, you know, low level in his career, I think just working like a basic, like, I don't know, like grocer job or whatever. Not there's anything against that, right? But it's like, you know, kind of a low life, if you will, like lived with his mom or something like that as well. So the, you know, the worst, I guess, in the totem pole of dudes, you know. So, and then he saw this, you know, started watching like this misrepresentation of stuff, of like alternate media of, oh, so like the I think it was like the superheroes, if you will, or like are taking over everything about us, kind of like an analogy of, hey, you know, some other group, whether it be immigrants, whether it be, yeah, you know, I think that's maybe what they're calling more so of, are trying to take away our everyday life, right? And they're attacking my group. That's where I feel like this is where things could be headed, you know, if I guess people like Kyrie Irving and Kanye, they're not held accountable of, you know, their influence. And I think they don't know their influence of what is the worst possible thing that can happen from you saying these words. It's that somebody can say like, oh, Kyrie, Kanye, who, you know, we hold in esteem in our culture and all that, they're saying these things. I agree with it. And now I'm going to act on it by, you know, doing something awful, right? So that's where I feel like it needs to be, he doesn't realize the power, like either him or Kanye realize the power that they have and influence that they have on people acting and doing things that are destructive towards your fellow man. And that's where I feel like, yeah, something needed to be said or addressed there from the organizational standpoint. And I honestly, I have no idea what's going to happen to Kyrie. Like one of the most talented players I've ever seen, like, coolest dribbles in the world. But how do you come back from this? I feel like it's going to be fun and hard, I feel like. But yeah, a lot of things are going to have to take place.
Yeah. I mean, or they understand what their power is and they just don't care. I mean, they're careless in their approach. They're like, Kanye obviously has gone through a wave of mental health issues. He's got a recent divorce. I mean, his life could be in a pretty dark place right now. So like him airing out all this passion, all these problems that he has, or kind of moving into what could be an anti-Semitic type approach. I mean, that could be ultimately what he's trying to drive. He's trying to drive more hate, and I think the problem is like fighting hate with promoting hate is an option. It's an approach, but it's not a solution. And it kind of reminds me if you're at work or in a group or whatever else, and everybody just talks about all the problems. They just talk about the problem with what you're putting out there, with what the organization's putting out there. But it's like, okay, well, what's the answer then? What's the actual solution? And people that are doing it the right way are putting together plans. They're trying to, like you're saying, build equity. They're trying to think about reparations. They're trying to think about tax credits and other things that could truly uplift, truly help. And it seemingly started off well for Kyrie when the wake of George Floyd, the murder and everything else. It seemed like his messaging and his approach seemed very humble. I've heard he's done a lot of great things in the community. People back that up in terms of what he actually does on a proactive side of things. But again, you can do all these good things. It just takes like that one careless, destructive type decision, like posting a anti-Semitic documentary without a lot of citations to the world. And look at how the world's reacted now. And it's just another thing, another drop in the bucket for this guy. I don't think he can be. I don't think he could be helped. He's 30 years old. I mean, I think if this kid, was 22, if he was Ant Edwards making a homophobic slur, those are things that Ant's going to learn from, and hopefully never ever does it again. But like, you're 30 years old, dude. Like, you've been through the ringer. You know how this world kind of operates: media, basketball, race. I mean, you've played on this before, but we're here still. If I was Joe Tsai or Sean Marks, I would do whatever I could to salvage any value for this guy, because the hope of him, like, not only just stopping all this, but like actually giving a crap about playing basketball. It's mind blowing, because you watch them. I mean, the other night they came into a game without him and went on the road to Washington, and like Durant did like a really nice 1-2 step and shook Daniel Gafford to the floor. It's like, I'm sure he's just like, let's go play basketball, man. And it's like, got to be refreshing a little bit to be on the court and not have to worry about all this other stuff.
Yeah. No, it definitely is like, I don't know I'm not a psychologist or anything like that, but I do wonder about, I guess, Kyrie's mental health, similar to Kanye in that sense. It's like, when you're always contemplating of all the issues of the world, right? When that's like 70% of your focus, that's like 70% of like what all you can talk about. Like, that's just a slippery slope of destruction for yourself, right? So, that's where I see it's like something needs to, I guess, occur in that sense, or some sort of intervention to be like, hey man, like, you have a platform, you can be positive about this. You can try to switch it up, talk about, anti-Semitism more, rather than hey, I get if there is one good thing to kind of come out of this, is like to learn more about, I guess, the kind of that there are like Black Jews out there, and how that kind of whole progress. And because to be honest, and I definitely agree with Kyrie on this aspect of like, a lot of these things just aren't taught within the American school system, or any type of school system really. And that definitely, speaking as an Asian American, that I see that a lot in the Asian American community, where it's like, nobody really talks about any of the Asian American history, or about, the Chinese and the railroads, or anything like that, or, or exclusion acts. Like, that's nobody really discusses that, and I definitely, can side, I think, with Kyrie in that aspect. But then at the same time, like, the actions or words that you're talking about, it's heading down the way of eliciting violence, similar to, I think, with Trump and January 6th more so, right? And that's where, and he's, I guess, to his credit, he's kind of, I don't want to say like completely apologize. I think a lot of people are like, is that all you got? Right. I think, Adam Silver was like, yeah, that wasn't good enough. Let's talk about this more. So it was definitely like more of a deflection rather than like an apology. And, that's the one thing about apologies, right? Is like when you ask for an apology and they say like, sorry, whatever, it's like, are you really sorry? Like, are you just like saying it just to, kind of get out of this whole thing? So, which it definitely feels like it's a little bit more of that. And that's where it's like, you have a platform, let's try to build from it more so rather than, kind of trying to divide people, or you don't even try to divide people, because like what you are kind of doing is dividing people. Like I'm reading the YouTube comments, I'm reading the Twitter, comments as well. It's not looking good. Like there's a lot of people that are just like, oh yeah, like stick with it, Kyrie, like, very much kind of like against the man, very anti-establishment, anything, right? And that's just where I feel like, something could be like if I'm the FBI, I'm like, this thing's might be a little bit crazy now. Let's keep an eye on this. So that's where I'm like, Kyrie, I feel like you have the power to make some sort of change if you want. And, great that you've been doing things in the community, but like, like I think it was Warren Buffett said something along the lines of, it takes a lifetime to build up like a reputation or brand, but it takes like 1 second to ruin it. Right. And I think we're kind of just witnessing that right now at this point. But, I think Kyrie, he definitely is an eccentric person, but, hopefully things, he can turn things more positive. I think with regards to creating more of a relationship and more of, awareness on these issues, more so rather than like, hey, this person did this to us, like, let's go get him type of thing. So, yeah.
Yeah. And with your point, I mean, I feel like knowing some of this origin story would be helpful. It'd be great if he posted about a book that tells you more about, being of African descent and being Jewish, and like, what was that route like? If there are atrocities that happen along the way, why not point them out? But go to a credible source. It's almost like you almost felt like he maybe saw something in his own Twitter feed or something about this documentary and then read the, IMDb, 4-sentence summary and was like, ooh, that sounds like something relevant to, what's happening right now in the world. So I'm just going to post this without really doing my due diligence. And I'm going to stand behind it because, it seems like it's relevant to me. I feel like he just needs to like dig into stuff a little bit further. Like maybe he's just not doing his own homework. Like he's not actually watching the doc fully, or he's not reading the book fully. He's just reading the cliff notes. And it's like, yeah, man, that's like, it's pretty dangerous once you start, pulling excerpts and kind of posting this and, not thinking you're promoting it in the same process. So, that's more on a personal side for him. But like when we do talk basketball, we get back to the NBA, get back to what is actually happening on a court. Like, I don't see him like being a real factor anymore. If he's on your team, he's not just not a factor, but he's actually something that can like pull your team down. And we're seeing it right now.
Yeah. I feel like he's almost like Kawhi, and I love Kawhi. I almost feel like it's like Kawhi just shuts his mouth and like he doesn't I'm hurt, whatever, like, whereas Kyrie's like, Jews and stuff. So that's where I'm a little bit, in a way, they're kind of similar in that aspect. All the talent in the world, have championship pedigree, have showed up in clutch moments. I think Kawhi is 2 as opposed to, I guess, Kyrie's 1, right? But it's like, they have all these other things. They're great players in and of themselves, but whether it's injury or, that mentality of like, oh, I'm interested in some other things at the moment, whether it's cultural issues, right? That's where it's like, what are you doing here? And, this almost goes to show like, I actually have a lot more appreciation, I feel like, for LeBron now in a way. Like, you see all this drama from all these other athletes, right? It's like, what's the worst thing LeBron's doing? Like, starting schools and stuff like that. And this is where it's like he's making the difference, right? Like, be the change you want to see in the world. That's literally what LeBron's doing there. So, I guess kudos to him. And yeah, like if Kyrie wants to maybe bring a more constructive voice to the situation, it's like, okay, yeah, take those points that I guess you got from this, was it Heroes to like Negroes or whatever movie. Take the points that you, I guess, agree from there, and then obviously modify it. But then, hey, maybe work with LeBron, make your own movie that shows and documents this a little bit more thoroughly. without, quoting Adolf Hitler. So, stuff like that. I feel like, hey, this is, an opportunity for more constructive content. I feel like on their side a little bit more so. And I think that would be much better platform and format rather than, posting, was it like a trailer for this movie and all. So, yeah.
Yeah, I'm with you on this. We will see where this goes. I mean, it's going to be at least 5 more games, so we'll have to evaluate like the bare minimum of what happens to him. But I guess we'll see down the road like what's the major impact of some of this decision making. I guess with that, Wayne, did you have any sort of closing thoughts for today's discussion?
I have no idea anymore. I don't know if it's the shot of Malort or the Kyrie conversation we just had, but I mean, I don't know. I'm hoping that the Bears, they progress on offense and then their defense just like does whatever, and then we get a nice pick and then we advance from there long term. But yeah, I mean, I don't know. I guess just building, off the Kyrie conversation is just, I think there was a movie, I forget what it's called, but it had to do with like chess a little bit, right? Where they took people from the inner city, I think of like Detroit, and they put them in this chess program, like it was like an after school type of program, and then they sensed that a lot of these children, right, in like inner city Detroit were part of gangs, part of gang violence, and were so angry. But then they took this chess course, and then that just essentially kind of got them to think a little bit more before pursuing any type of actions, like oh, so and so stole my bike, therefore I got to shoot them, or oh, somebody has Jordans, I got to shoot them, right? Like, no, at least what this whole chess program did was let's think things through a little bit more, right? And I feel like, hey, in that kind of situation, like this is where I feel like a lot of people, just need to be a little bit better and think things through and be kind to each other a little bit more. So that definitely is that shot of Malort and that bitter melon, I feel like, taste coming out. So, but yeah, what are your takeaways or thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, on this whole thing, like, I can't control what other people are going to do with their platforms. Obviously, millionaires with this kind of attention on them and stuff. Like, you just hope that if they want to keep this conversation going, even if it's going to lead to some sort of debate, discussion, awkwardness, tension, all fine. Just do it in a way that's responsible, something in a way that's like credible, and just think it'll have a better effect. I mean, if he did what could have been done there by promoting this in a much different fashion, by exposing the world to some of these truths, like in a way that was credible, I think more people would listen. And I think that's ultimately what's going to get more people to listen, is if you back stuff up with facts. And hopefully these tech platforms can also continue doing their own due diligence on misinformation, disinformation. We need a world that actually is knowledgeable, and a world that's actually credible for what they put out there to the universe. So we'll see where everything goes on that front. On a much different front, irrelevant to everything we were just talking about, my final thought or closing thought, Wayne, I saw you had a post up about Cracker Barrel, and yeah, dude, I resonate with that, man. That resonates with me. I got to know more about your love for Cracker Barrel, because generally speaking, I think I've been there a handful of times on these long, arduous road trips, and been a really big fan of the chicken fried steak, those hot apples in the morning with breakfast and stuff. But what got you into it? And like, let me hear some more.
Yeah, no, I mean, I took some trips to like Michigan and everything, and on the road, it's like, oh, there's this Cracker Barrel there. I got to go there. And every time that ever happens, I just felt really good about life and all that. So there's something towards that. And those rocking chairs too out front, like, man, those things are lovely. Just sitting out there, kind of like out of that porch type of atmosphere, after like a really good meal. I'm like, I get it. So, one more story on that was like, I went to Zion National Park out in Utah, actually, and there was this area. I think it was kind of like a mini store / I think there was some food in there too. But yeah, they had those rocking chairs out there actually. And I was with a friend. And we were just talking like, hey, let's sit on those chairs. And we just went after a hike and we just want to chill and sit down. So we did. We went on the rocking chairs, just sat there for a second. And I'm like, told my friend who had never been to Cracker Barrel, I'm like, hey, this reminds me of Cracker Barrel. And then, we got in a conversation about what Cracker Barrel is and all that. And then I see like these two, like, they got to be like 50, 60-year-old, white women. And they're like, wow, this reminds me of Cracker Barrel. And then I look at them and I'm like, yes. And it became that time where I felt like I identified with a 50 or 60-year-old white woman from, who knows where and everything like that. And I'm like, I get you, sister. I get you. So, yeah. And I don't know. For me, it was just the food, the biscuits, that chicken, dumplings, country fried steak. Like, I think deep down inside, I was actually named after John Wayne. So I don't know. Maybe there's a little bit of cowboy in me that's just like, oh, I love this stuff. So yeah.
I love it, man. Your Cracker Barrel was my Perkins growing up. I don't know if you've had, okay, it looks like you kind of may have had Perkins before, but we used to take road trips up to Minnesota. I think we went with my aunt the first time ever. I think I was like 8 or 9 years old, but had Eggs Benedict. They came out with those really big cinnamon rolls. They have like a to-go bakery that has like pies and muffins and all this stuff. And you used to have one of those like crane games right before you left. So I'd always get to play the crane game. I think it was like you play till you win or something too, which was really nice. So I always went home with something, but kind of that nostalgia, that warmth or whatever. And I was actually rolling through Ohio on my way to Chicago this past summer and stopped with my wife over at a Perkins just to get something in the morning. And man, like time really changes a lot of perceptions and stuff. Cause I walked in and the bakery was looking pretty ratchety. I mean, there was nothing really left on the racks and no cinnamon rolls or, I think we ordered some coffee and they came out in this white styrofoam cup with a soda lid on it. And I was like, okay, definitely isn't a to-go coffee place either. And got through this coffee about halfway through our road trip journey. And the bottom half was just like grounds of coffee. It was just a bunch of sludge. It was disgusting. And man, it just really, it hurt me. I was like, hey man, we used to have like a really honest relationship here. And like, just getting like kind of, you're talking on both sides of your head here with these meals and the way you run stuff these days. But yeah, man, time can change some stuff, but in a lot of ways, yeah, your Cracker Barrel is definitely like my Perkins memory.
Yeah, I know. That sounds awful. Yeah, it's like one of those things like, oh, why'd you have to ruin my childhood now? Like as an adult, like, as I've evolved my palate a little bit more, right? It's like, yeah, this stuff doesn't hit the same, I think, whether it be McDonald's or for me, Jollibee, actually. I feel like that too. I remember going there as an adult, like 10 years separating between when the last time I had Jollibee and then to what I have right now, right? And it's like, oh yeah, like this spaghetti and hot dogs, this is kind of childish. It's like Chef Boyardee stuff, but as a kid, it's like, this is amazing. This is the best thing ever. So no, yeah, I get it. It's like as an adult, sometimes those things you had as a kid or when you're younger, it's like, yeah, this doesn't fly as well, I feel like. So yeah.
Man, I actually want to try Jollibee because I've actually done more research on it than I've actually even had like a bite of it. Because there's like these Harvard Business Review cases we used to read in college. I read the same case in undergrad, and then read the exact same case in grad school, and I was just like, damn it, like I got to try this stuff because it's like just the way they kind of catered toward local taste with fast foods in the Philippines and stuff, and they brought their way over to America. I feel like they were most likely in California to kick it off, but I could never like find one either. So I heard there's one like in the Chicago burbs now, or maybe more, but still just haven't had access to it. So I never tried it.
Yeah. And I think they're coming more so. I think there's one in New York, New Jersey area. There might be one in the DC. I'm not too sure. Maybe Florida. So yeah, just around the coast and Chicago, I think, from my understanding. But yeah, it's funny is like, I mean, I think there's, and I think I read a study, I don't know if it's true. This was like maybe 5-6 years ago, but I think there was like more Jollibees in China than McDonald's or something like that. So like they really, dominate, I guess, the Asian business, or from the business standpoint, they really dominated the Asian market even more so than McDonald's. So yeah, they're doing something right. But yeah, definitely try the fried chicken with gravy. I think that's pretty solid. Sure, go for the spaghetti with hot dogs just for the sake of it. But then you definitely have to go there for the halo halo or that dessert at the end there. So I think
What's that?
it's like a mixture of like beans and like jelly, and then usually some ube ice cream with some like shaved coconut. Yeah. It literally means mix.
Okay.
So
Okay.
it's a mixture of a bunch of stuff put together, and it's if you like sweet and a little bit of those beans type of things, then definitely go for that. Try it once and then thank me later. But yeah, I think that combination I would recommend rather than like their burgers. More so, it's like it's hard to beat like good old fashioned American burgers, I feel like sometimes. So
Yeah. No, I just looked it up. There's one actually 15 minutes away on the edge of DC there. So we're trying this. I'm getting this, whether I eat it on the spot here or just give you a full review next time we shoot or something. But I mean, this is going down, man.
If I had to do this, man, I feel like you can do Jollibee. So
for sure. Cool. Well, let's end it there. Man, Malort brought into Ball and Breakfast. This is amazing. Wayne, we can close it out. I'm Patrick here, and we'll talk to you guys very soon.